as promised, I wanted to make a short little video showing you how I created my burner backpacking brush. So here it is. It's brilliant because it's super compact and super lightweight. Now I realize the weight of a toothbrush isn't a primary concern, but this little guy right here does come in at just 4 grams on my scale, which is certainly light, and more importantly, it's extremely compact, so it takes up almost no space in your pack. Really, probably the main reason why I wanted to use this is because it just seemed intuitive to me that I already had a handle. Why would I take a toothbrush with an extra handle on it? So, Spork, burner brush, snaps right on there, and there you go. Fits securely, doesn't wiggle around or anything, and it allows you to have a nice full handle on your toothbrush, and you can get back to your back teeth and everything with no trouble. Ta-da! So there you go, Sporkbrush, and when you're done, you just pull it off. The first step to making my Sporkbrush is to prepare the toothbrush. So you can take any regular toothbrush of your choice, and what you have to do is you have to rough up this backside and get it ready for the epoxy to stick on it. You can probably do this with a variety of tools like a Dremel or even just rubbing sandpaper on it. But I also like to actually cut it down to be a little bit thinner so that when I stick the bracket on it, it doesn't stick out too far. So I'm going to do that with an angled grinder that I happen to have. And I'm going to do that now before I cut the handle off. Once I have the toothbrush ground down with my grinder, and you can see it's much thinner here, I like to just clean it up with a piece of sandpaper. So I've got a piece of sandpaper laid flat. Again, it's much easier if you leave the handle on at this point. And you can just rub the toothbrush on the piece of sandpaper just to smooth out little burrs and things. Alright, that is ready to go. All we got to do now is cut this off. Now I can use, and I usually do use, the grinder wheel to just cut it right here. But if you don't have a grinder, you can actually score it with a knife and break it off. So since not everyone has a grinder, just score it really good right there and work your way all the way around. If you have a deep score in your toothbrush, it should just crack off. There we go. So now I have just the toothbrush head. I'm going to round out these edges a little bit with my sandpaper. There we go. That is ready to go. I'm going to rinse this off to make sure that all the plastic dust is off and that the epoxy will stick on it really good, and then we'll be ready to make the mount for the spoon. Spork. After preparing the toothbrush head, you've got to mold the mount that goes around your spork, and this is the most challenging part. What you're going to need is a piece of Kydex. If you're not familiar with Kydex, it's plastic that you can shape by heating in the oven. This is the thinnest Kydex they make. You can buy it on Amazon. I'll throw up a link on my blog along with everything else you need. To cut it, because it's the thinnest Kydex, you can actually cut it just with a pair of scissors. Need a marker, your toothbrush head, and your spork. So So for the width or the length of this, you're going to want to just mark out the height of your toothbrush head, like so. Just cut a strip on along like here. And then for the width, I find that 1, 2, and about a half. 2.5 widths of my spoon is just about right to wrap around, but not completely around, and I'll explain why that matters in a second. Alright, so I have my marker there. I'm going to just cut it to the proper width. There we go. That's going to wrap around like that, and that's going to form my mount. Now I'm about to throw this in the oven, but before I do, I'm going to stick some tape on one side of it. It's the method to my madness, I swear. Going to put the Kydex on one edge of the tape like this. Now, once it's hot, I'm going to pinch this around my spork and tape it to hold it. Alright, on to the tricky part. I have a plate, you can put it on whatever. I'm going to put my little piece of Kydex on the plate. Just like that. And I'm going to put this in the oven. And I'm just going to let it heat up in there. Now the Kydex I think is supposed to be heated at like 340, 350. I'm not even sure. Doesn't matter because the temperatures on ovens aren't that accurate anyway. A lot of people use an electric toaster oven. That's probably better, but I don't have one. This seems to work fine. I find that the actual temperature that works well is 400 degrees by the oven. But again, that's not really accurate. You just kind of get it in that range and heat it up until it's good and pliable. And you'll see in a few minutes when I take it out that it's really bendable and it will just mold itself right around the spoon. I'm going to put it on this foam that I cut out of a old camping mat. I'm going to place it down here. I'm going to place my spork on top of it, and then I'm going to be able to wrap the plastic Kydex around the spoon, put this foam on top here, and then squeeze down on it like that to mold it and tightly onto the handle of my spork. You'll notice I am wearing gloves because it's gonna be really hot when I pull it out. So, word of warning. Alright, that's the plan. We're gonna run through it. It's gonna be awesome. Now, that Kydex is hot and extremely flexible, but it cools off quickly because it's extremely thin. So that means you gotta work pretty quickly. I'm gonna pull it out, slap it down, slap this on, wrap it around. Hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Alright, that's it. Now I'll just sit here for a minute or two. It doesn't take long. It cools off quite quickly. And as soon as it's cool, it's rigid in whatever shape you had it in. Hopefully you saw how I kind of pinched it around the spoon first, and the tape helped me hold it in that position, wrapped around the handle of the spoon. And then once it was wrapped around the handle of the spoon, I squeezed down on it to get it tightly on there. Should only take a minute. Yeah, it's already cool. So here, there's a slight indent right there. And on the other side, slight indent. When I squeezed the foam pressed the Kydex, this plastic, into that hole when it was still flexible. So now, when I push it in, it snaps right in. So this should be perfect. Now all I have to do, final step, I have to attach this to this with epoxy. Now it's very important that you attach it to this side without the seam and not to this side. If you attach it to this side, I've found that this slit can't spread open to pull the toothbrush on and off. So I'm going to attach it right like that. To do that, I'm going to use this epoxy. Now this is an all-purpose epoxy, and there are two important things that I've found with this epoxy. First, it has a strength of 8,000 psi, which was the strongest I could find, at least at Home Depot, which is where I got this. And second, down here, it says it's safe for potable water tanks. So I know that this can come in contact with drinking water, which convinces me that it's fairly safe to have in my mouth when I'm brushing my teeth. This epoxy works really well. When I used this, I couldn't break the toothbrush part off of my spork mount. Now before I used this, I used an epoxy, a plastic weld, thinking that an epoxy specifically for plastic would work better. But every time I used this, no matter how careful I was in joining the two surfaces, I could always break them off with a little bit of force. So I was not very impressed with this. I don't know what the strength of it is, but I suspect that it's much less strong than the general purpose epoxy that has an 8,000 psi. And in fairness, the general purpose epoxy does list plastic as one of its uses. Gonna go ahead and pull my piece of sandpaper out again because I want to roughen up the side of the Kydex that I made here just to make sure that the epoxy will connect to it really well. Now I want to make sure that I get all that dust off. You could also just rinse it off. There, that's clean. Gonna do the same thing here. Alright, now, time for the epoxy. You will only need a very small amount of this epoxy. Just gonna cut off a little bit of it. Right, like that. knead it as per the instructions. Spread a tiny bit onto the back of your brush, and then squeeze the two together. There we go. Now I'm gonna set that out to dry for an hour and it'll be done. I've let it dry for over an hour. This stuff says that it needs to dry for an hour. Pay attention to that. Once you let it dry, one thing that I've done is I've tested it to make sure that it fits and also that you can't really break it easily. That's how you can tell that you've got a real good bond. It's not gonna break off there. So the only other thing that I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna have my piece of sandpaper here and I'm just gonna rub down these edges, just kind of smooth them out. There you have it. Now when you're all done, you should have something. Slides right on there like that. And you can get really easily to the back of your teeth and everything. Piece of cake. So that's it. It snaps on there securely. It doesn't slide around at all. There you go. That's exactly how it should work.